This video is the part 2 of installing the engine mount on the engine and then on the chassis. So in the first segment we covered installing the engine mount to the engine. This segment we're covering installing the engine mount and engine on the chassis. So the first step is to grab your tools. You're going to need an 8mm Allen, a 5mm L-handled Allen, and a large flat blade screwdriver. You also need the same sockets and wrenches in the previous video, the 17mm and the 19mm sizes, and the torque wrench. So the first step in this process is going to be installing the butterflies on the bottom of the engine mount. Now you're not going to torque these down at this time, you're just going to snug the engine mount. And you also want to double check the placement of the engine to make sure it's in the approximate location of the final fit. Now you're going to take the 5mm Allen and you're going to tighten the front Allen bolt for the tie rod. Now once that's done, you're going to do a final torque spec of 35 foot-pounds on the butterflies or chassis clamps. Now what this is going to do, this is going to firmly secure the engine mount to the chassis. So if there's any imperfections, we want to be able to take that slop up in all the hardware so that way the engine can run as true as possible and we don't put a preload on the engine. So the next step is to grab your screwdriver and you're going to put the screwdriver underneath the front hump of the case, and the object here is to lift the front of the engine and you want to push down on the rear of the engine. So you want to preload the engine in the engine mount so the front of the engine is lifted upward. Then you go to the back, you're going to tighten the back first. And again, this is using the 19mm size tools. And you're going to torque it to approximately 60 to 70 foot-pounds. Again, that's 60 to 70 foot-pounds. And then the front, you're going to use the 17mm tools. Still lifting up on the front of the engine, you're going to torque the front bolt to approximately 35 foot-pounds. Again, the idea of this process is to try to keep the engine as free and unbound as possible. We don't want to have a nice engine and then you bolt it to a cart, and then with the imperfections between the cases and the chassis, you end up putting the engine in a bind. So again, that is part 2 of how to install the engine mount on the engine and then on the chassis. Check out our other videos on YouTube. Thank you.